Good afternoon, dear friends. I'm glad to meet you. And now I'll tell you the following tale, the tale of the ox and the donkey. There was once a merchant who owned a great deal of money and men, and who had a large number of cattle and camels. He also had a wife and family, and dwelt in the country, since he knew a great deal about farming and agriculture. Now Allah Almighty had endowed him with the ability to understand the language of birds and beasts of every kind. However, it was decreed that if he were to divulge the gift to anyone, he would be punished by death. So, out of fear, he kept his unusual gift a secret. In his barn he had an ox and donkey, each tethered in his own stall next to one another. One day, when the merchant was sitting nearby with his servants and children playing around him, he heard the ox say to the ass, "Greetings, friend. I hope that you continue to enjoy your rest and good care. Everything under you is swept neatly and watered down. Men wait on you and feed you sifted barley and give you pure spring water to drink. On the other hand, I, unhappy creature, am led forth in the middle of the night when they set the plough and something called a yoke on my neck. I'm exhausted from cleaving the earth from dawn till dusk. I'm forced to do more than I can and to bear all kinds of mistreatment every night. And at the end of my work they take me back with my sides torn, my neck flayed, my legs aching, and my eyelids sore with tears. Then they shut me up in the barn and throw me beans and hay mixed with dirt and chaff, and I lie in dung and filth, and there is nothing but a foul stench throughout the night. But you are always in a clean place and are always able to relax, except when the master has some business in town, and that's very seldom. Then he just mounts you and rides to the town and returns right way. This is the way things are. I toil and have no rest, while you relax and have leisure time. You sleep while I'm sleepless. I starve while you have all you want to eat. When the ox stopped speaking, The donkey turned toward him and said, "Oh, you lost soul! Whoever dubbed you bald-head did not lie, for you are denser than the simplest of simpletons. With all your zeal, you foolishly toil for the master, and wear yourself out and kill yourself for the comfort of someone else. At the call of dawn, you set out to work and don't return until sundown, and throughout the livelong day you endure all kinds of hardships, such as beatings and cursing. Now listen to me carefully. When you go into the fields and they lay that thing called the yoke on your neck, lie down and don't get up again, even though they hit you with the switch. And if you do have to rise, lie down a second time. And when they bring you home, withdraw and content yourself only with the hay and chaff. Pretend you are sick and continue to do this for 2 or 3 days. This way you'll be able to gain some rest from all your hard work." When the ox heard these words, he knew that the donkey was his friend and thanked him. "This is good advice," he said, and prayed that the ass would be blessed with a fine reward. The next day the driver took the ox, set the plough on his neck, and made him work as usual. But the ox took the donkey's advice and shocked the ploughing. Consequently, the ploughman drubbed him until the ox broke the yoke and made off. But the man caught up to him and turned him until he thought he would die. Nevertheless, he did nothing but stand still and drop down until evening came. Then the ploughman led him home and put him into his stall, but the ox drew back from his manger and neither stamped, nor butted, nor bellowed as he was accustomed to do. Such strange behavior puzzled the ploughman. Then he brought the ox beans and husks, but the animal sniffed at them and lay down as far from them as he could and spent the whole night fasting. Next morning the ploughman came and saw the manger full of beans, the hay untasted, and the ox lying on his back in a most sorry plight with his legs outstretched and a swollen belly. Of course he was very worried about him and said to himself, "By Allah, he has certainly become sick, and this is why he wouldn't plough yesterday." Then he went to the merchant and reported, "Master, the ox is sick. He refused his fodder last night, and he hasn't tasted a scrap of it this morning." Now the merchant understood what all this meant, because he had overheard the talk between the ox and the ass. So he said, "Take that rascal donkey and set the yoke on his neck. Tie him to the plough and make him do the ox's work." Accordingly, the ploughman took the axe and made him do the ox's work the entire day long. And when the donkey let up out of weakness, the driver made him feel his stick until the animal's ribs was sore, and his sides were sunken, and his neck flayed by the yoke. When the ass returned home in the evening, he could hardly drag his limbs along. Meanwhile, the ox had spent the day lying at full length and had eaten his fodder with an excellent appetite. He continually heaped blessings on the donkey for his good advice, not knowing how the donkey had suffered and that it was on his account. So when night set in and the donkey returned to the barn, the ox rose up before him in his honor and said, "May good tidings warm your heart, my friend. Because of you I have rested the entire day, my friend, and I have eaten my food in peace and quiet." But the ass did not reply, because his heart was burning with rage, and he was exhausted from the beating he had gotten. Indeed, he regretted that he had given the ox such good advice and said to himself, "This is the result of your folly in giving good counsel. I was living in joy of and happiness until I mixed into somebody else's business. So now I must think of something and treat the ox so that he'll return to his place. Otherwise I'll die." Then he went wearily to his stall, while the ox continued to thank and bless him. "And the same thing will happen to you, my daughter," said the vizier. "You will die for not having used your brains. Therefore I want you to sit still, say nothing, and refrain from exposing yourself to danger. By Allah, I am offering you the best advice that comes from my affection and great concern for you." "Father," she answered, "I must marry the king, and you can't stop me. I don't want you to do this, but I must. If you are not silent and do as I say, I'll do to you just what the farmer did to his wife." "And what did he do?" Scheherazade asked. After the donkey returned to his stall, the farmer went out on the terrace of his house with his wife and family, for there was a full moon. Now the terrace overlooked the barn, and as the merchant was sitting there with his children playing around him, he soon heard the donkey say to the ox, "Tell me, friend, what do you propose to do tomorrow?" "To continue to follow your advice, of course," said the ox. "Indeed, it was as good as it could be, and it has given me a good deal of rest. So when they bring me my food, I'll refuse it, blow up my belly, and pretend to be sick." The ass shook his head and said, "You'd better not do this." "Why?" the ox asked. And the donkey answered, "I must warn you that I heard the merchant say to the plowman, 'If the ox doesn't get up from his place to do his work this morning and doesn't eat his fodder today, take him over to the butcher to be slaughtered. Then give his flesh to the poor and make some leather out of his hide.' You see now why I'm afraid for your life. So take my advice before something terrible happens to you. When they bring you your fodder, eat it." Then get up below and paw the ground, or else our master will surely have you slain. May peace be with you." Thereupon the ox arose, bellowed aloud, and thanked the ass. "Tomorrow I'll certainly go out into the fields with them," he said, and he ate up all his food and even licked his manger. All this took place while the merchant was listening to their talk. Next morning the merchant and his wife went to the ox's stall and sat down, and the driver came and led the ox out. Upon seeing his owner, the beast whisked his tail, broke, whined, and frisked about so merrily that the merchant laughed loudly and kept laughing until he fell over on his back. "Why are you laughing like this so much?" his wife asked. "I laughed at a secret, something that I heard and saw, but I can't reveal it to you. If I do, I'll die." "Well, I insist," replied his wife. "Tell me why you laughed so loudly and what your secret is. I don't care if you have to die." "It has something to do with the language of birds and beasts, but I'm forbidden to tell it to you." "By Allah, you are lying!" she exclaimed. "This is a mere pretext. You were laughing at nobody except me, and now you want to hide something from me. But by the Lord of the heavens, if you don't tell me the cause, I won't sleep with you any more. I'll leave you at once." And she sat down and cried. "Why are you weeping?" the merchant responded. "Stop all this jabbering and crying. Tell me why you laughed." "Listen, I'm telling you the truth. When Allah granted me the gift of understanding the language of the birds and beasts, I made a vow never to disclose the secret under pain of death." "No matter," cried she, "tell me what the ox and donkey were saying, and if you have to die, you have to die." And she did not stop nagging him until he was worn out and totally distraught. So at last he said, "Summon your father and mother, our kith and kin, and some of our neighbors." While she went about doing this, he sent for the lawyers and assessors, intending to make his will, reveal his secret to her, and die under the penalty of death, since his love for her was immense. She was his cousin, the daughter of the father's brother, and the mother of his children, and he had lived with her for 120 years. Now, after all the members of the family and the neighbors had gathered, the farmer said to them, "Something strange happened to me some time ago, but if I reveal my secret story to anyone, I am bound to die." As a result of his remarks, everyone present began saying to the woman, "May Allah be with you. Stop being so shamefully obstinate and realize what the consequences are. Otherwise, your husband and father of your children will die." "I refuse to change my mind until he tells me his secret," she replied, "even though he may have to die." So they stopped trying to persuade her, and the farmer got up and withdrew to a small chicken house in order to be by himself and pray before his death. Afterwards, he was going to return to them, tell his secret, and die. Now, in this chicken house, the farmer had some 50 hens under one cock. And while he was getting ready to say his farewell to his people, he heard one of his farm dogs talked to the cock, who was flapping his wings, crowing lustily, and jumped from one hen's back to another and treading all in turn. "Oh, Chanticleer!" the dog cried out. "How can you be so mean and shameless? Whoever brought you up should be burned at the stake. Aren't you ashamed of doing such things on a day such as this? And just what is so special about today?" asked the rooster. "Don't you know that our master is preparing for his death today?" the dog responded. "His wife is determined that he must reveal the secret taught to him by Allah, and the moment he does this, he's bound to die. We dogs are all mourning already, but you flap your wings, crow as loud as you can, and tread hen after hen. Is this the time for having fun and taking your pleasure? Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" "By Allah," retorted the cock, "is our master a nitwit? Why doesn't he come to his senses? If he can't manage matters with a single wife, his life is not worth prolonging. Now, I have some 50 dame partlets, and I please this one, and provoke the other, and starve one and starve another. And through my good governance, they are all well under my control. Our master claims that he is smart and wise, but he has only one wife and hasn't discovered yet how to deal with her." "Well, what should our master do?" asked the dog. "He should get up right away," answered the cock, "and take some twigs from the mulberry tree over there and give her a good beating until she cries, 'I repent, oh my lord, I'll never ask you another question as long as I live.' Then let him beat her nice and hard once more, and after he does this, he will sleep soundly and enjoy life. But this master of ours does not appear to have an iota of good sense or judgment." When the merchant heard the wise words spoken by the cock to the dog, he arose in haste, cut some mulberry twigs, and hid them in his wife's room. Then he called to her, "Come into your room, so that I may tell you the secret and die without anyone looking on." She entered the room, and he locked the door. All of a sudden he began to beat her back, shoulders, ribs, arms, and legs in a great fury. "Are you going to continue to ask questions about things that don't concern you?" And he kept beating her until she was almost unconscious. Soon she cried out, "I repent. By Allah, I won't ask you any more questions. I mean it. I repent with all my heart and life." Then she kissed his hands and feet, and he led her out of the room, submissive as a wife should be. Her parents and the entire company rejoiced, and sadness and mourning was changed into joy and gladness. Thus the merchant learned family discipline from his cook, and he and his wife lived happily ever after until death. And the same thing will happen to you too, my daughter, continued the vizier. Unless you give up pursuing this matter, I'll do what the merchant did to his wife. But she answered him with firm resolution. I won't give up, father, nor shall this tale make me change my mind. So stop your talk and babbling. I won't listen to your words, and if you try to prevent me, I'll go to the king alone and say, I asked my father to allow me to marry you, but he refused, since he begrudged you the right to have a maiden like me. Must it be this way? Her father asked. Indeed, it must. Since the vizier was now weary of contending with his daughter and realized he could not dissuade her from doing what she wanted, he went to King Shahryar, and after blessing him and kissing the ground before him, told him all about his dispute with his daughter and how he now intended to bring her to him that night. The king was most astonished, since he had made a special exception of the vizier's daughter, and he said to him, O most faithful of counselors, how has this come about? You know that I have sworn by Almighty Allah that after I enter her this night, I shall say to you tomorrow morning, take her and slay her, and if you don't do this, I'll slay you in her place. May Allah guide you to glory and give you long life, your majesty, answered the vizier. It was she who made this decision. I have told her what it is to happen and more, but she won't listen to me, and she insists on spending this coming night with your highness. So Shahryar rejoiced greatly and said, So be it. Go get her ready and bring her to me this night. The vizier returned to his daughter and informed her of the king's command. By Allah, please don't make your father do this. I'm sure to lose you. But Scheherazade rejoiced and got everything ready that she needed. Then she said to her younger sister, Danazade, pay attention to what I tell you. After I have entered the king's private chamber, I'll send for you, and when you come and see that he has had his carnal pleasure with me, you are to say to me, Oh sister, since you are not sleepy, tell me some new delightful story to entertain us while we are still awake. And I'll tell you a tale that will be our salvation, if it pleases Allah, for I am going to tell a tale that will, I hope, divert the king from his bloodthirsty custom. I'll do whatever you say, Danazade replied, with all my heart. So when it was night, their father led Scheherazade to the king, who was glad to see her and asked, Have you brought me what I need? I have, the vizier said. But when the king took her to his bed, began toying with her, and was about to penetrate her, she wept, and consequently he asked, What's wrong with you? Your Majesty, she replied, I have a younger sister, and I would like very much to take leave of her tonight before dawn comes. So he sent at once for Danazade, and she came and kissed the ground, and he permitted her to take a seat near the foot of the couch. Then the king arose and did away with his bride's maiden head, and the three fell asleep. But when midnight arrived, Scheherazade awoke and signaled to her sister Danazade, who sat up and said, "May Allah be with you, my sister. Please tell us some delightful story to while away the waking hours before dawn." "I'd be most happy and willing to do this," answered Scheherazade, "if this pious and auspicious king will permit me." "Permission granted," said the king, who happened to be sleepless and restless, and was therefore pleased by the prospect of hearing her story. So Scheherazade rejoiced, and on the first night of many nights to come, she began telling the tales that were to fill the volume of the Arabian Nights.